I love stories. One of my favorite stories, in fact, isn't even a movie or a book or even an event that happened in real life. One of my favorite stories actually is from the video game Halo. And I honestly believe video games tell some of the best stories ever. And when I'm able to create my own story in a game, that just makes it so much better. On Roblox, there are so many different games you can create your own story in. Most of these games are roleplay games like After the Flash, The Walking Dead roleplay, and Starship roleplay. Just because the game technically isn't labeled as a roleplay game doesn't mean you can't roleplay on it. And I think one of the best examples of this is a game called The Isle. It has one of the best stories on Roblox I've ever played, and it's not even technically labeled as a roleplay game. As amazing as I think being able to create your own story in a game is, the problem for me comes at trying to tell someone the story I just experienced. How do you convey the emotions you just felt as you were playing the game? You can simply just tell them the story, I guess, but at that point you just gave a list of events that happened in the game, not really the grand story you just experienced. And that really sucks, because I wish they could see the story unravel in front of them like I did and feel the emotions I felt while playing. So with this video, I tried to do exactly that. I recorded myself playing one of my favorite roleplay games, and I'm going to try to take you, the viewer, along with me and tell you this story as I was seeing it through my eyes. Anyways, sit back and enjoy the story. This day started out pretty much like any other day. I wake up from my quarters and I go to work because I am the chief engineer of this great and beautiful ship. I hurry up and put on my EVA suit because I have an inspection to do on the core, and that sucks. I hate doing inspections on the core because it is deafening. It is loud down there. Thankfully, we do have within these built-in helmets some noise cancellation, so that really helped a lot while doing this core inspection. Except I didn't turn it on until near the end of my inspection when I had to be 2 inches away from the core. So it gets really loud. I break character for a second to check my settings because, as I said, it is very loud, very deafening. So I have a list of things I wanted to get done during this inspection, and I was going to start with check generator for correct sound. I don't know what that means. Checking for
Security.
the sound.
Be aware, the prisoner has escaped. Please apprehend her at all cost.
Okay, I didn't know we had a prisoner, but I guess we have a prisoner, or we had, because I guess she escaped. It's not my problem though. I'm working. That's security to deal with, and I am far from security. I'm at the other end of the ship. Anyways, at this point, I go check the nitrogen tanks just to make sure they are not leaking. And you would definitely hear if they were leaking. It is really quiet on this side of the engineering of the core. So it seemed all good to me. Next, I go check this main power core. One of the things that's the core sending power through is through this main pipe. And I'm checking the bolts, make sure that they're not loose, because if they were loose, that'd be bad. Just making sure it's still loosened, safety wired, everything is still good, because if it was broken, that'd be very bad. And this is when I get really close to the core and I realize how absolutely deafening that core is. So I go ahead and turn on the noise canceling that I was talking about earlier, the noise canceling on the helmet, and you could tell it gets significantly quieter. So I walk back up to the core a second time and listen to that difference. You could barely hear the core, which is great. I love these helmets. These EVA suits are amazing. They are uncomfortable though, just in the lower area, hip down. Not the most comfortable thing, and the chest area, it's very bulky on the chest. At least this EVA suit, not all of them are like this. As I'm doing more hardware check, making sure the bolts and nuts and safety wire are still installed on these bolts, and I head back to my office because I'm done doing that physical inspection. And you can hear when I turn off the noise canceling.
Have the prisoner handcuffed to the chair in the big interrogation room at once.
That's great. That sounds like we've got the prisoner. See, I told you, it wasn't my problem, and I wasn't gonna deal with it. I realized this is not the correct door. At this point, I'm done with the inspection. Anything I needed to look at, I looked at. Anything that I need to listen to, I listened to. Everything in the core seemed fine to me, physically. So now that I have the idea of what the core is like, I go ahead and input that data into my computer so that for next time, when I do this next time, or whoever the next person is that goes to do the inspection on the core knows what's going on. So I'm basically just typing away, putting in data. I want to also mention, along this roleplay, there's some people that don't follow the roleplay that we're going in. Like, there will be a furry, unfortunately, throughout this episode, just one time. Or maybe he's there 2 times, but I just chose to ignore him. Kind of broke the roleplay tiny bit, but who cares? But it's whatever.
Vessel has disconnected from this system's communications. Will reconnect with local shortly. Security. Check the reactor and cargo hold. Prisoner claims those are where we have bombs aboard.
Bombs aboard this ship?
Engineers and stewards, please turn down the heat.
The heat? Okay, 2 things just happened at the same time. Supposedly we have bombs, and then supposedly it's too hot. Are they talking about the core? The core temperature is... I mean, it's fine. I just did it. And bombs in the reactor room. I'm in the reactor room right now. Or I was. I just did the inspection here. I can tell you, there's no bomb in the reactor room. You can go to the cargo bay. I can tell you right now. I should have told the security guy right as he was walking by, but I didn't see him. Whatever though. He figured out that there's no bomb down there, anyways. I do a quick inspection to see what the temperature of the core is, and the temperature is still sitting at what it was before. But I go down there and check the computer that's actually attached to the reactor to see if that computer might have a better reading than the computer that's up in the office. This computer pretty much is telling me the same number as the computer upstairs was. I turn up the coolant a tiny bit from here, because if they think it's too hot, just turn up the coolant. I thought, well, I know this is, it's well within its good conditions to be in this temperature. So I could go change it down there, make sure it changed up here, and I get back into my dress uniform that I was in before getting out of the EVA suit. And I see the captain, Captain Catherine H. Oh goodness, I don't like this captain. I realize this captain is actually not the smartest, and they really didn't care. I made sure I told her about the core being too hot, I suppose. I told her pretty much what I did, my corrective actions. I told her that I said reactivated, but I should have just been honest with her and said that there was nothing wrong. I added a little more coolant, turned on the pumps a little more to push a little faster. And she just said, that's neat. Told her it should be returning to normal, whatever normal is. It should be going down, not returning to normal, really. But she said, that's neat and good. And then walked away. Doesn't matter then. I just go back to my office after this because I just did an absolute number of things. And the day wasn't over yet. I still had more things to do. Literally, not 5 minutes after this, I get called out to do a job on some gas leak. So I go out there and I realize, yeah, there was a little gas leak, right? But it was just a little nut, right? This big nut here just had to be tightened a little bit, right? It was nothing serious, okay? Well, it could have been serious. That could have been really, really bad. I basically just tightened this up, and you'd imagine that was the end of it. But no, this guy here, Cooper, messed up something with the coolant pipe. The thing I just, he bumped into it and made a hole. And then he had to fix it. I wasn't gonna let this guy slide. So I made him go fix it. And now that I'm back in my office, I realized I wanted to get everyone together that works for me, works in engineering, and get them together. And I had a plan to do an entire ship-wide inspection to go through everything and make sure that there's nothing broken. And if there is something broken, we know about it. That way, if someone comes to us and tells us, hey, this system or this component is failing, it's broken, we know it is. We saw. We already did the inspection. It's on the list of things that are going to get fixed soon. That way people aren't coming to us with surprise things. Unless it's an emergency, like, hey, all of a sudden a meteor hit us and we got this knocked off. And now we can't do that. I finally gather up all my troops and I let them know what I have in mind in terms of how we're going to do this inspection and how I want this inspection to look like and what it's going to include. Because we have had many issues. We've had 2 coolant problems, one because of little Cooper over there, and one because security or someone, I think it was communications, said it was too hot. So I just turned up the coolant. I guess it wasn't really a coolant problem, but I'm going to count it as coolant. We had a gas leak, and then we've had a bunch of other minor issues that I don't know of. And I didn't know of until someone came up to me and was like, hey, go fix this. It's like, what the hell? Where is this coming from? I literally just did an inspection on it. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. I do the work. But I wanted to make sure that any problems that we find within the entire ship, not just engineering sector. I know I said engineering sector here, but I meant to say the entire ship. We're going to note, make sure, like in that note include what the problem is and a course that we can use to fix it, so that when we get to fixing that problem later on, we can actually just get working on how they suggested we fix it. And if that's not a good suggestion, we'll just find another way. But it's a good start, kind of get us stepping in the right direction. I made sure I point out to them that we need to only do an inspection. We're not going to repair anything. I just want a detailed list of what needs to be done and what they think the action for fixing it would be. So that's it. That's all I want. I don't want them to fix it. It shouldn't take any more than 10 minutes, 20 minutes to go do an inspection in the game of the entire ship. I mean, the ship's not that big and there's not a lot of important sectors that we really need to cover. And we'll split into teams once we all come back, and we'll start knocking out problems. We'll start with the smallest problems and work up with the biggest problems, depending on, how major. If it's a time sensitive matter, then we'll get working on it. But the worst was yet to come. Not that long afterwards, this guy, one of the engineers, comes up to us and says, hey, what's hitting us? And as he says that, the alarms and the announcement.
This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. We are under attack. Man your station.
I had no idea how to react. I quickly gathered up all my troops, and I honestly didn't know where to start. I told them we're under attack and that we need to get this core ready for emergency jump. The ship is shaking, and I told everyone to get EVAs on because I don't know the damage of this. We could be walking into a depressurized room.
Delta breach detected.
And now we have a delta breach, which tells me we definitely have a hole in the hull of the ship. Thankfully, we have our EVAs, so running into those depressurized zones shouldn't be a problem, considering we have oxygen packs and we'll be able to breathe for a short amount of time. So my next plan was to send these 2 people, Lewis and Clyde, to the core and get it ready for...
All officers, please stay at the bridge or head to the docking bay.
Getting it ready for emergency warp, and I did not follow that order. I should have followed that, but I didn't. While they were going to the core, I decided to go to the weapon control room, I believe. That's where the torpedoes are located. And I wanted to make sure that those torpedoes were ready to go Me and Nick went to go do this. Nick went down to go look physically. Damn. And that's why we need those torpedoes ready, so we could at least start firing back. Nick went down to go look at the torpedoes physically, while I sent an intercom message up to the bridge so that they knew the core was ready, or was going to be very ready to use for an emergency jump.
The core is ready for emergency jump.
I was actually really surprised to see that Lieutenant Jake here, a gunner, was already here doing the checks on the torpedoes. This would mean that safety was off, so we're able to use them, or he's able to use them, and that they were actually ready for launch. So that is good. I wanted to go on the computer and check the exterior cameras to make sure that when we were hit, nothing got in front of the torpedo launching site, and that it won't obstruct the actual launch. Nick and I returned back to the engineering office to check what the status on the ship is using the hologram table. We discovered that a torpedo pod was actually jammed from the inside on the right side, so we're only going to be able to fire 3 from the right side. The delta breach that was detected earlier came from the mess hall, and we have multiple smaller breaches throughout the entire ship. We have too much going on this ship and not enough people to deal with them as they come. So we had to prioritize what is more important and forget about the delta breaches and the smaller breaches throughout the ship, because we cannot fix that while we are under fire. I go down to the core to check on what the status is. Nick decides he wants to go to try to unjam the missile so we have that missile available to us. To feel the ship shake, I get really anxious to get these warp drives ready. Clyde and Lewis have the warp core ready for 2 emergency jumps. It's keeping the core really, really hot, so it's either we use it now or we don't use it at all. Having this information, I decided to take it up to the captain and let them know we have 2 emergency jumps just in case we need to use them. I let the first officer know what the situation with the warp core is, because the captain wasn't around. And she says we don't need to use those because we're estimated to win the fight. But we're still getting
Door
shot.
system operational.
We knew our captain was an idiot, and now our first captain is also just as much of an idiot. Thankfully, though, our gunneer was not an idiot, because yes, we actually were estimated to win that fight, but we shouldn't have been so cocky like this first officer was. And we actually start to charge up the railguns. About time. As I'm walking out of the bridge, I see Lewis running straight for us. He tells us that the core is overheating because we're keeping it on emergency standby for 2 jumps. After talking with the first officer, saying that we don't actually need those 2 jumps, I just say forget it, we don't need them, so forget it. We're going to cool off the core, and we're just going to leave it at 1 standby jump, because that core is going to blow up if we keep it at the temperature it's at.
Radio communications back online.
Lois goes back down to engineering, and I tell Nick to follow him, not knowing that this was the last time I was ever going to see both of them. I go back to the bridge for the last time, and I tell our first officer that we only have enough for
Delta
1
breach
jump
detected.
now. I go back to engineering, unable to find a single person.
Engineers, please get to work on temporary repairs to the lounge's windows. We are scheduled for a warp towards the repair station soon.
For once, I actually decide to listen to what the announcements say, and I go working on some of the Delta breaches, but I'm not going to start on the lounge. I decided to unfortunately start with the meeting room, and I had no idea what was about to happen next. Son of a bitch.
Warning, oxygen leak detected.
And just like that, I knew I was going to die. I have been ejected from the ship, my thruster pack took damage, my oxygen system took damage, and I kept drifting further and further from the ship. After everything I just went through, after everything that just happened, this is how my story ends.